Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Dorn Geek Book Talk on the Star Wars Expanded Universe. Today, we are going to talk about the courtship of Princess Leia. Let's get right into it. Yes, the courtship of Princess Leia. This book was published on April 1st, 1994. No fooling. It was... Sorry about that one. It was written by Dave Wolverton. This is an interesting book because we're going to do a couple of things with this book. One of the things that we're going to do is jump a little bit ahead in the timeline. I always like talking about the timeline. Make sure we know where we are and when we are. So we are at 8 ABY. That's 8 years after the Battle of Yavin. If you remember the previous book, if you've watched it, wonderful. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. The last book was The Truce at Bakura. It took place in 4 ABY, so we've skipped 4 years since the last book, and we are now 8 years after the Battle of Yavin. That's a really significant thing because it gives us room. Okay, it allows us to move beyond Return of the Jedi. It allows us to let things happen a little bit, and this will prove to be really important. Just to give you an idea, 8 ABY gets us at 4 years after Return of the Jedi. It also gets us to about a year and a half after the formation of the New Republic, in a capacity that matters. Okay, so the New Republic is formed very, very soon after Return of the Jedi, but it doesn't matter until they wind up on Coruscant. And so we're a year and a half after the New Republic takes over Coruscant, actually establishes itself on Coruscant, and therefore becomes the actual ruling government of the galaxy. If you're not on Coruscant, you don't matter as far as a government entity, right? And we're going to see that that's not quite right in this book specifically, but overall, that is where you're at. If you are not on Coruscant and you try and call yourself the leader of the galaxy, you try and call yourself the government of the galaxy at large, you're just kind of fooling yourself. You're just the ruling government of whatever little area that you've carved out for yourself. Let's look at the ages of our heroes here. Luke and Leia, the Skywalker twins, they are 27 years old. We're starting to get up there now. We're not really talking about them being babies anymore. I know I have kind of a younger picture. I just like that picture. That's really the only reason I'm using it. But Luke and Leia are now 27. They're starting to come into their own. I mean, Leia has been grown up forever. Right? You can't really think of a time when you met Leia where she wasn't, maybe at the end of episode 3 when she's just a newborn infant. But Leia is very grown up. Luke, on the other hand, a lot of growing up to do, right? So we get to see Luke growing up more. We get to see him growing in the role of Jedi Knight, all these things. Then we have Han Solo, and Han Solo is now 37 years old. I'm not going to say. Han Solo is now 37 years old. He's starting to sort of climb up there in age. We're not talking old here, obviously, although maybe some people watching this think that's old. But we're not necessarily talking old. He is 37. Wedge Antilles is going to be significant. again in this book as he was in the True Sepulchre, but not quite as big of a role, but still a pretty significant role. And he is 29. He's about 2 years older than the Skywalker twins and Luke and Leia. And Wedge's role and the way Wedge has evolved is going to be interesting here as well. I think you're really going to enjoy it if you're a Wedge fan. Mon Mothma, still the leader of, well, this new government now, not just of the rebellion, but of this new government. And Mon Mothma is 56 years old now. So she's really seen a lot. She's really been around for a lot of things. And her being 56 really puts her in that young enough to be significant, but old enough to be seen as a real leader, that sort of thing. And then we're going to introduce a new character. This is Prince Isolde, or Isolde, depending on how you decide to pronounce it. I'm going to pronounce it Isolde. Prince Isolde is about 2 years younger than the Skywalker twins. He's 25. And Isolde is going to be a character that we definitely have to watch out for. But first, let's take a look at our major places that we are going to visit in this book. The first one being Coruscant. Of course, we have to visit Coruscant. The New Republic has newly taken over. It's only been a year and a half since they've taken over on Coruscant. So this has to be talked about, and we have to really explore what's going on Coruscant, and they will, but we're going to spend time on Coruscant, so it's a place worth thinking about, a place worth making sure that you know that we're going to visit. Okay, that we're going to spend some time with. Coruscant, of course, probably the most significant planet, the most significant city, all that stuff. And then we're going to visit, at the time, a new planet, Dathomir. A lot has been done with Dathomir now, but this is the book that introduced Dathomir. And you're going to find, if you're a fan of Clone Wars or the Ahsoka series or Rebels, you're going to find that this is a different Dathomir. I really enjoy this version of Dathomir. I enjoy it a lot. Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with the version of Dathomir that has been put into the other media, but this version of Dathomir has more to it. It's far more three-dimensional than the version of Dathomir that we see in the other media, in the Disney fan fiction. I always refer to it that way, by the way. And then we're going to see Hapes, the Hapes cluster, the planet Hapes. This is going to be a really wonderful journey, I think, for everybody discovering Hapes. Hapes is going to continue to be important. Let me make that very clear. This is not a one-off book thing that neither is Dathomir, that you get to and then forget about. On the other hand, this last planet, important to this book, but Tula is only important to this book. You don't want to miss it as a part of this book, but it's not something that you have to really commit to knowing about the way that you do Dathomir and Hapes and the Hapes cluster and the Hapes consortium, all that. Let's take a look at our major characters and relationships. We have to start, since this is the courtship of Princess Leia, we have to start with Leia and a lot of her relationships, beginning with her relationship with Han Solo. This is a continuing thing, but remember, we've gone 4 years since Return of the Jedi. And what is their relationship like now? It's a question worth exploring. And then Leia's relationship with Prince Isolde and who he is to her. How did she meet him? What has been the relationship between the two of them? How are they together? Not that I'm saying they're together, but how are they together? And then the relationship between Luke and Yoda. And you have to think about, I think the important part of this is thinking about how is Luke knowledgeable of Yoda? What does he know about Yoda's past? Of course, we know a decent amount, but Luke, And then Luke and his relationship with the Queen Mother. You're going to meet the Queen Mother. I, of course, did not talk about her age at the beginning because, heaven forbid, I talk about the Queen Mother's age. But Luke is going to get to meet the Queen Mother, and they're going to have some interesting exchanges. It's an interesting dynamic. I'll just say it that way. Luke is also going to have a very important relationship and dynamic with Prince Isolde. That is something you're not going to miss. This the thing with the Queen Mother, if you were like reading too fast, not paying too much attention, you might miss, so pay attention for that. But Luke's relationship with Prince Isolde is something that you are not going to miss. I promise you. It is a very significant part of the story. Watch out for it, but you won't miss it. And then Luke, and a new character again that we're going to introduce. Again, I did not talk about her age, but Tenennial Joe. Tenennial Joe is going to be a wonderful character, and her relationship with Luke is what do I want to say about it? It's entertaining. It's interesting. And then Prince Isolde's relationship with Tenennial Joe. And I really maybe should have put her name first. It's more like Tenennial Joe's relationship with Luke and Prince Isolde, and the way she sees them and the way she perceives those relationships way, way more than the way Luke or Isolde perceive them. Luke and Isolde are not the significant part of the story in those relationships. Tenennial Joe is, which is a really interesting dynamic. And her relationship with Isolde is one that you want to pay very close attention to. You don't want to miss details from it. Her relationship with Luke is going to be a little more obvious, but the relationship with Isolde is something that you want to really watch. And then Han Solo and his relationship with the Singing Mountain Clan. Han's relationship with the Singing Mountain Clan is one of the wonderful, what do I even want to say about it? It has an element of comedic relief to it, and I'm giving away. There's a little bit of a spoiler in the slideshow here, but Han's relationship with the Singing Mountain Clan gives us an element of comedic relief that at times is desperately needed in any Star Wars story. I really believe in any story, but it gives us that element. And then to get to a more serious relationship, Han's relationship with Warlord Zinj. Warlord Zinj is a character, again, he's not so significant that I felt I had to give like background of his age and things of that nature, but it is definitely worth making sure that you understand Zinj's, there he is now in the slideshow, Zinj's relationship with Han Solo and Han Solo's relationship with Zinj and what they have been through together as you read this book. I say together, I mean, take that lightly. Okay. But it's really an interesting, I keep using the word dynamic. I don't know what other word to use. Let's look at the major events that you're going to have to watch out for in this book. We're just going to tease these major events. The New Republic meeting with another government. Now, we had an interesting relationship between the rebellion and the Empire in the Truce of Bakura, but now we're not talking the rebellion. We're not talking this little thing that was trying to take over. Now we're talking about a full government and their relationship with another government. I'm titling this one Old School Peace Talks. And I'm not quite sure if that teases too little or gives away too much. To tell the truth, I think I'm just gonna leave it at that. You're going to go through some old school peace talks, some things that you might consider traditional might be one word for it. Another word for it might be ancient, outdated. And I'm teasing it a little bit with the image that's up there right now. But I think you're going to find it interesting as a way of seeing that tradition hasn't completely gone away in a lot of areas, okay? You're going to discover things about a younger Yoda. Now, this was written before the prequels were created. So, young Yoda was kind of a blank slate. Just bear that in mind. You're going to find out what happens when Han Solo gets desperate. You are not going to be surprised about what Han does when he gets desperate. Well, maybe you will for part of it. But what I'm teasing there, I don't think you'll be surprised at all. Han Solo, of course, is going to do what Han Solo does. He has not evolved or grown very much by this book. And again, you're going to get to see the original Dathomir and the original Dathomir Force users. What's interesting about this, partially at least, is how much that idea has changed among people who have recreated it. Okay? More major events to look for. How does a witch become a Night Sister? This question is an interesting question for us to look at. It mirrors certain things. I'm sure you can guess a little bit at the things that it mirrors. But the question of how a witch becomes a Night Sister is a question that's going to be very much explored in this book. And it takes us to some interesting places. I really like the different force using aspects, the different things that come about within this book. I really like that part of this book. The question of what the Empire was doing on Dathomir, I guess I'm giving a little thing away here, but it's a thing that as soon as you start reading about Dathomir, they're going to tell you, so I'm not giving away really anything significant here. What was the Empire doing on Dathomir? That question will be answered in this book. It's not something that you're going to miss, so don't worry about it too much. Here's a big giveaway, but I don't care. You're going to discover the origin of a certain species, and I'm giving the whole thing away with the image, but it's really interesting to read about. It's a really cool part of this book. You're going to enjoy it, I promise you. And then Luke's discovery of some old Jedi stuff. Luke is growing in a very different way in this book. And the way he gets to the whole thing and the way that it's talked about, you get to see Luke discover things, little things about the old Jedi. And then you're going to get to see Luke's piloting skills as a Jedi. Now, you might say, oh, well, we saw that. We saw that in episode 4, and presumably he was using his force powers and force awareness in the other movies. But I promise you, it is so worth it in this book. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I hope you go out and read this book. Go out and find this book. And our next book is going to be Heir to the Empire. Yes, we are going to begin diving into the Zahn 3-book cycle, the original Zahn 3-book cycle. Before I go with this book, I just want to add just a tiny bit here. Because if you go out and get the only official audiobook of The Courtship of Princess Leia that there is, which is an abridged version, you are going to find yourself woefully out of the loop on a whole bunch of information. Everything is covered that I talked about, but you're missing so many elements of the details when you do that. I highly suggest you do one of two things. Either read the book, actually read it, or find the unabridged Courtship of Princess Leia, which you can find on YouTube channel YJK Audiobooks. They have done a wonderful job. They are incredible for this, also an unabridged version of the True Sepakura on YJK Audiobooks. Thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you next time for the next book talk. May the Force be with you.